Thank you all for joining Luxury Institute's webinar with Replika Software on how to innovate a tech company the luxury giants love. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared following the session. The recording will also be available on Luxury Institute's website, our YouTube channel, along with our podcast. Any questions you have, please share using the Q&A box, and we'll address as many questions as we can during the last 10 minutes of the session. If you would like to connect privately to ask any questions of our panelists or share feedback, all contact information will be shared at the end. Now I'd like to hand it over to Luxury Institute CEO and DataLucent Chairman Milton Pedraza to welcome our speakers. Milton?
Thank you, Katie. The topic today is how to innovate a tech company that even the luxury giants will love. We'll get more into what that means. But I want to thank you all for joining us today. We know your time is precious, so we invited two highly successful tech entrepreneurs in the luxury goods and services and retail industries. We're going to share their journey, their fascinating learnings, their insights, their experiences with us. So maybe we might get inspired to start our own companies after having illustrious careers. So Kareen and Corey, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you each please share with us highlights of your individual careers. Kareen, you go first. And then I want to know, as we get into the dialogue, how you guys met and how you decided to create this very successful luxury retail technology company. So Kareen, you're first.
So I am Kareen Mallet. I'm one of the co-founders of Replika Software, a company Corey and I created in 2016 in New York. And prior to that, I spent 17 years as fashion director of Neiman Marcus and Bergdorf Goodman. After that, I went to a social commerce platform that worked with ambassadors. Corey and I met in 2003, and he'll tell you the story how we met with his first venture, actually as an entrepreneur. And then when I had the idea in 2016, I didn't know how to create a company in the US. Who could help me for the tech. So I reached out to Corey, pitched him the idea at a restaurant in the meatpacking district. And then that was the beginning of the journey.
Thank you, Kareen. Corey?
14th Street and 8th Avenue. So I'm Corey Gottlieb. My career has two parts to it. On the corporate side, I used to run large sales organizations in the media industry, CBS Outdoor, Paramount Pictures Television. So I had lots of salespeople working for me all over the world. And for the most part, we were selling most forms of media. I decided to become an entrepreneur in 2000, and many of you have probably seen the work of my first venture. I was the guy responsible for putting the screens in taxi cabs in New York City, San Francisco, and Chicago. So I sold that in 2005 when we got the rights to deploy them in all the New York City cabs. In 2007, this thing called Facebook became interesting, and especially interesting to advertisers who didn't know quite how to use it as an advertising and marketing medium. And so I started an early social media agency and ran that up until Replica really became successful. And as Kareen mentioned, during the time where I was putting screens in taxi cabs, I noticed that we were coming up upon Fashion Week in New York. And I said, wow, wouldn't it be great to have like a major luxury retailer on the screen so that during Fashion Week, I would showcase the screens that I had. I tried reaching out to all of them. The only one who answered my call was Neiman Marcus. Kareen was running the New York office. That's how we met.
Wow, brilliant. And so now tell us how you decided that you were going to join together to create Replika Software.
So I guess I'll start with that. In Kareen's last venture before Replica, first of all, we kept in touch from 2003 on till 2016 in different ways. But essentially, when she was working on her first startup, she needed some advice and some consent from somebody who's been in the industry of social media. And so she came to me, and we kind of introduced ourselves and more from a business perspective, understanding what makes us tick as individuals. And I think we both realized that after kind of putting this together and saying, you need the right partner, that we realized that we were the right partners. And I'll just mention something, just silly stuff that you have to think about as an entrepreneur. We always laugh about this, but like, we are never late for a meeting. And you know this from your personal life. Like, if you're a person who's always on time and somebody's always late, it'll drive you nuts. It'll literally break up a partnership. So we have all of these little personality quirks that some people would find annoying that we actually find synergy with. And that's kind of what helped us get together as a partnership.
That's very important to note. So what was the problem that you guys were trying to solve that was in the marketplace when you conceived of Replika Software? Kareen?
So, from my observation, the way consumer was starting to shop, getting more online inspiration on social media, and then with foot traffic diminishing inside the store, sales associates started to take their own pictures, sharing their products from the store by pictures to the customers online. And then the customers would receive those pictures, sometimes would Google it and find it on as a retailer. And there was no connection between that pictures being sent and then that purchase done online connecting to the sales associate. So the original idea was really to create a tool to empower those sales associates that are in the store that don't control the foot traffic, that are waiting for customers, give them a tool to be able to sell online, and for the brand to control kind of the whole assets. Pictures of a $4,000 bag taking from the store is not as great as the images taken by the brand. So for the brand to control the entire experience. So that was the original idea of Replica, which is still valid. But then it expanded to not only sales associates, but experts, let's just say hairdressers, that speaks to clients every day and want to sell online and be connected to that sales, to peer-to-peer selling and ambassadors and influencers. So the product Replica evolved over the years too.
So in one sentence, if you were to tell me what Replica stands for today, what's the value proposition? What would it be?
So it's a turnkey applications for brand to activate the network of social sellers, to sell online, to inspire on social media, and to connect with customers anytime, anywhere, and for brands to control the entire experience.
Okay, so when you conceived of Replica, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as entrepreneurs? I mean, you had a lot of expertise from your previous careers. And to me, this is one of the great inspirations, is that you reinvented yourselves, basically, right? Using your past, but you reinvented yourselves into technology entrepreneurs. And that's a big leap.
I'll tell you a quick story about that, Milton. In my first venture, I was a pretty successful guy in the corporate world. I, had a nice income and so forth. And when I decided I was going to become an entrepreneur, I went out looking for money for my first venture, the taxi cabs, and uniformly every single investor goes, "Corey, wow, you're a smart guy, you've got a great career, but you really have no experience." And I'd be like, "No experience? I bill $1 billion a year, and I have 1,000 salespeople." He said, "But you've never been an entrepreneur, so you just don't understand what you're about to go through. And so therefore, while you may have had a good career here, you're a rookie to us." So that's,
So what were the biggest challenges you guys faced then? Give us the top three, maybe.
Yeah.
When you decided you had a concept, you didn't have the technology yet, right?
No.
So how did you then go about through that phase of your entrepreneurial journey?
So I guess the first thing I would say is, Kareen came to me with this idea, and she made it relevant for me. And while she described one of the use cases, the one that really resonated for me was, she said, "Corey, when I want to buy something," and Kareen, she's been in the fashion industry her whole life. "When I want to buy something, I don't go to neimanmarcus.com or Macy's.com or whatever the .com." She goes, "I get my inspiration from Instagram and from people, I look at on the media that look great, and I want to know where they got their outfits from." So the whole thing for me was first talking to some friends and advisors about the space, understanding who the competitors were, talk to your friends, just throw ideas out to the people in your circle. And that's what we did. We have to also figure out the relevance, right? The one thing I always say in our business model and every business model is, don't try to reinvent any wheel. understand consumer habits, understand what people do, regularly, enhance that experience, use technology to make it easier, more fun. That's the goal here, not try to change an absolute, human behavior that already exists. So, understanding the relevance of what we were about to do based on current trends in the business was really important for us to kind of gather. And of course, Kareen knew more about this from the fashion perspective, but we're a bigger picture than that, right? We're in the fashion, luxury, and cosmetics industry, but we're also looking, we're expanding now into insurance, into, every industry that sells a product or service online. So understanding the relevance was important. Then, in order to create anything that's tech-based, you have to start with, I hate to be old school with this, but a pencil and paper, and just start writing down user stories, right? Who are your users? How are they going to use it? And write them out, because if you can't articulate them to yourselves and your friends, you'll never be able to talk to a tech team about it.
So Kareen, tell me a little bit about, you're trying to create an experience, right? Ultimately, right? A customer relationship experience, right? Because that's what selling is, right? Buying and selling. So tell us a little bit more about how you flushed out the idea and how you brought that together.
So we started with the consumer experience, right? It always starts with the consumer experience. What does the customer want? They want to be inspired. When you're online, you go through 20 pages of dresses, so you want a curated experience. So if it's someone you know and trust, whether it's your sales associates in the store or an influencer, you want a curated path to purchase. So that was important, that the consumer experience would be respected when we build that platform. And then the user. So the user is that what we call social sellers, which can be a sales associate, we can be an influencer or an expert. And we wanted the platform to be so simple and not a software, because from my experience, no one in the beauty and fashion industry, they like curating, they don't like technology. And they want it super simple. So they know how to text, they know how to use Instagram, Pinterest. So an easy experience was super important to us. And then we thought of it for the brands. What would the brand want? They want control. They want to see the entire experience. They want the data of the customer. So they want the checkout to happen on their website, not a third-party website. So when we build the technology, we articulated all that, what would be for those three actors. And then that's how we build it. And it's really what differentiated us to other software was the usability of the technology. And actually our user love to curate and create inspiration boards on our platform.
So this is a question that is selfish, because obviously I'm the chairman of DataLucent. I work with Firework. When you first approached the brands, were they open to this, or was there a lot of resistance?
So we vetted the idea actually before building the platform, and the whole market was so excited about it. Everybody was just, yes, this is what we want. We want something where we can control the experience. So once we got this vetoed from the industry, from the key players in the US, we researched who could build a platform for us, and then we started raising money to fund that project.
But Milton, to the point earlier that you don't want to reinvent the wheel, when we went to potential customers, brands, and asked them about this and what we were about to create, again, we weren't trying to reinvent anything that they've been trying to do already, right? They already have loyalty programs, so they know the value of having loyal customers. They already have, all kinds of programs to try to bring the customer closer to them. But of course, in the world of the internet, everything gets commoditized a bit. So when we came to them with the idea that you can embrace social media in a way that's safe for your brand, use the connections of people to drive traffic to your own brand website, this was something they've been struggling with, something that they really wanted, and it was a real breath of fresh air to see that it could actually be done.
Thank you. That's very clear. So how did you raise the funding? Who did you go to who believed in your idea? Okay, brands agreed. How did you get funding? Because I know there's a lot of money floating around, but it's still hard to get the right investors. So how did you guys take that journey on?
So we started with early on with the idea. We pitched the idea to actually our network. We knew a couple of people from the Boston Consulting Group that are in the retail space. A couple of VC who did some angels, so not part of the VC. One of our biggest investors is also Ed Goodman, a VC, and also owns the building of Bergdorf Goodman. So know the retail industries, knew him from past ventures. So these were the early investors. It was not easy. We got rejected by all of our investors initially, and we had to do a lot of pushing to convince them on the idea. But we did the angel funding in several steps. So just first on the ideas, then we built an early product, then vetted it by some early clients, smaller clients. So we did all this funding in step, and then last year, after deploying with several brands of LVMH and L'Oréal, we reached out to the investment arms of those two companies, and for the first time, they invested together and in our companies. So that's been the funding story to date.
I just want to make one point here, though, Milton. As an entrepreneur, if you're going to wait for funding in order to start your business, then A, you're probably not of the right mindset, but B, you're not going to get the commitment from the funders, because people who invest in startups, they want to see that you're willing to put your blood on the line, your sweat, your equity, and your money on the line. So early funding starts with the entrepreneur, whatever you can do. And it doesn't have to always be money. It has to be time spent, energy put into it, be able to tell a cohesive story to those early potential investors, and really just show these early venture capitalists that you are in it for the right reasons and you're already deep into it. And that's what they want. They want committed entrepreneurs that have already put something out there.
So one question I have for you is, what was the time span between when you conceived of this, you decided to become partners, and then when you actually got a prototype?
6 months.
6 months. Wow.
Yes.
And that was before the funding?
So
or
much,
alongside the funding?
So we got the funding, I would say around 6 months too, but we started developing the product before. We got some commitment, but we didn't get the funding really before we got the early product.
We went out with PowerPoint presentations.
Yes.
While we were building in the background. We literally had PowerPoint presentations that Kareen pretty much did. And we went out and told our story. And again, just going back to the passion, the commitment, understanding your lane, understanding, how to communicate it properly. It's that old elevator pitch, right? If you don't make it convincingly in the first few minutes of your meeting, the meeting's lost. So, that was really what we had to build also. While we're building technology, Kareen and I were also building our story, right? Because you need those first few minutes of a meeting to be able to convince somebody that you're the right people, and then you have to tell them what you're doing. So they do come.
Neither one of you is a tech person. So how did you find the right people to build the product? Because there's a lot of tech people out there, but the right people, that's different. So how did you guys find that, and how did that evolve?
So
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kareen, you can take it.
So first of all, we have a brilliant CTO, Ashwin Dayal, that worked with Corey on a previous venture, building that Facebook advertising platform. And he is the one that's been managing our third party, the one that built the early software. So we found this software company that built tools, and we literally designed the software on the PowerPoint, give it to them, and then our CTO just manage them.
Okay, now working with brands on pilots, which I think was the next step, right? Did you work with some brands on pilots?
We did. So we picked some relatively smaller brands to start. That and for us, it was all about proving our thesis, but also finding those brands that had a very small chain of command, right? We speak to the CEO, they understand the problem that they are also experiencing, and they're willing to take a chance, right? You don't just go to LVMH and L'Oréal with an idea, you have to start somewhere. So we did go to some early, younger brands that understood the issue and were dealing with it.
And did the salespeople embrace this? Or how did you inspire persuade, influence the sales associates? Because the management obviously can dictate, but how do you inspire them to take on this journey and to take on this new way of building relationships?
So I'll let Kareen fill in the blanks on some of the specifics, but let me just say that what we were offering the brands was a very positive effect for their sales associates, right? Because if you think about it, in what Kareen had mentioned before, a sales associate in the Neiman Marcus sales floor might be sending somebody to their client in China a picture, but the only way to get credit for that sale was if the person gave you that credit card number and you stood at the physical POS machine and put in your, salesperson number. So the idea, and then also a sales associate on a floor of a major retailer, as an example, doesn't want to traditionally send a sale to their e-commerce site, because then they become an e-commerce customer. And this is all crazy because somebody at the top level of brand doesn't care exactly where the money's coming from, as long as
the
you
customer
develop,
sure doesn't care about
and the
channels,
customer really doesn't care. They don't care about any of that stuff. So that's why this particular question, this is an easy one to answer. Everybody saw this as a really positive development for their business.
Okay.
Now I can sell to anybody, anywhere, and still get credit for the sale, even if you're in my store or not, which I, as a sales associate, really don't even have any control over. This is a huge benefit to us. So and just a quick anecdotal story. To prove this thesis out, Kareen and I once went down to a major retailer, to their corporate headquarters. We had a meeting with all the big higher ups. Then we walked the sales floor, and we literally spoke to sales associates and showed them the prototype. And they were like, oh my God, how do I get this in my hand? So we knew we were onto something at that point.
Interesting. Okay, so now you've got a working prototype. Tell me how then you make the leap into the big leagues with LVMH and L'Oréal, because you made it sound very like, oh, matter of fact, but how many brands actually get to do that? And that's why I say you built a product that even the tech giants would love and embrace, not only with it as a project, but as an investment. So walk us through that journey. Don't give away any secrets that would embarrass anyone, but tell us how that happened, because that doesn't happen to many companies.
It took a lot of hustle because, so you have small brand and then your investors say, okay, now are you going to get the big brand? And we all know, especially in the fashion and beauty industry, brands are followers. So they are looking at what big groups are doing. So it was essential for us to get one of those big groups, not only because the rest of the industry follow them, but also because they are global. When you work with LVMH, they are everywhere in the world. When you work with L'Oréal, they are everywhere in the world. By the end of the year, we're probably going to be on every continent with Replica because of our association with LVMH and L'Oréal. So the story with LVMH took, as I said, a lot of hustle trying to get in front of the innovation person who was in charge of La Maison des Startups, which is an accelerator here in Paris where I am, and trying to get in front of him to just show him the solutions and everything. It took 6 months to get an appointment. I did it because I told him after several tried, that I was in Paris for 5 hours, and he said, oh, I have a window, come to my office at 2. And I went there and did the demo on my phone. And then 4 months later, we received an email that as we've been selected as finalists for the Innovation Awards of LVMH, and to be present at the Vivatech. That was 2 years ago. Vivatech is one of the biggest tech show here in Paris, and to be under the umbrella of LVMH. So Bulgari, Renard, Louis Vuitton were all showing their technology. And then they had invited 25 companies out of 2,000 to be showcasing the solutions. This was one of the highest high of Replica those 3 days. Not only being represented by LVMH, but also L'Oréal. So the CDO of L'Oréal, which is also was also the board member at the time, selected 3 companies at Vivatech, and Replica was one of them. And as part of that, her team requested a meeting with Replica, and they told us, you only have 30 minutes, just show us what you're going to present. And we were invited in a special room at Vivatech to meet with her And they kept saying 30 minutes, no more, no more.
Yeah.
And we stayed 1 hour and a half. And
Love it.
1 hour after leaving the meeting, we had for 3 days around 500 executives from L'Oréal, from every division, every country,
Flooding our booth.
flooding our booths
Oh
nonstop.
my God.
This is what really put Replica on the map, being recognized by LVMH at the Innovation. The highlight of, I guess, those 5 years of Replica is being on stage with Mr. Arnaud when he was with all the other 25 solutions, was really one of the highlights of those 5 years. And
But no, I think the key, just for the audience here, is that we had heard the word no 100 times, and yet we knew that we had something to build on, and we just had to find the right audience for it. And Kareen, soft sold the story, but she literally almost grabbed onto this person at LVMH to say, "You need to see this." The guy gave her like 10 minutes, which turned into an hour, which ultimately turned into a long-term relationship. So no is just the entrance to start negotiating.
I'm glad you said that because I continue to be inspired. I applied for DataLucent for the Maison des Startups. We did not make it, but you're encouraging me to say I'm not giving up, certainly in moving the company forward. So, okay, so now you have this recognition from Maison des Startups, from Monsieur Arnaud. And so now I would almost say the hard part begins, because now you have to scale this monster, right? So what have been the challenges? I mean, how have you started with brands? How do you engage? Again, nothing confidential, but give us a sense of how you scale now this wonderful opportunity that you have in front of you.
So I think, obviously every business is different. We're probably, lots of people have lots of different ideas or businesses. So every business is different, but what's universal is understanding your key clients and who the stakeholders are within an organization, because you need a champion, especially when you start to work in some of the big organizations that, require a lot of buy-in from the legal department or the HR department and so forth. You have to have your champion. So that's really, really important. You also have to understand, what is a measure of success for that client, right? Because, we may think, well, if, from our previous experience, we had 10 people making 3 sales a week, and somebody who's in a global, in a global situation will be going, I'm not interested. It's not for the effort. I'm not interested. So understanding what their measure of success is was really, really important. Finding out what the challenges are internally and externally. We've dealt with GDPR issues. We've dealt with how do you pay social sellers? What is the HR relationship between a L'Oréal brand and a social seller who may just be, an influencer or an ambassador? So, understanding, finding that champion, and then understanding what a measure of success is and what challenges they're going to face as they go down the funnel to get this launched and executed is really the most important part.
So I'm curious, Kareen, in a brand, there's the head of digital. Forget the legal and the tech and the HR people for just 1 second, although I know they're important as part of the team. But so people ask me for certain products, is it the head of sales? Is it the head of marketing? Is it the head of digital? For you guys, because you're now empowering the sales associates. Somebody's in charge of the sales associates. Somebody's in charge of the stores. So how do you get that, I would say, mandate, but also the soft legitimacy to then work with those stores and those points of sale? What does that look like? Who tell me about the maze that optimizes that.
We actually work with, we have meeting usually with 10 to 15 people from one brand, and they ran from the people running the e-commerce, because we integrate directly with the e-commerce. People from the store, people from digital, people from marketing, because we touch all these areas. So there's usually all these people involved, and we usually have very, very large meetings. So it's just not just one area, because it touch all these areas. So we cannot say we just speak to the digital person or the store person, because it's really an e-commerce transaction. So yes, it's empowering store people, but they drive traffic to the e-commerce side.
Corey?
Yeah, I think the key, to what we did was, I mentioned this before, we first dealt with smaller brands where the CEO was also the person cleaning the bathroom after they left, right? Like somebody involved with every aspect of the business. And so when the CEO said to his relatively small team, hey, I want you to talk to the people from Replica, the whole team came in. And that's really the formula we've used, in increasing our level of clients. You have to find that person in charge. We literally reached out to the CEOs of major brands. And in a lot of cases, they would just give us to either get on the call themselves or, put one person on the call. We convinced that one person, and then the big meetings would form, because you got to get the buy-in from the top that this is in line with what, their journey is and what they've been looking to do.
And Corey, you said that you have to understand the metrics of the client. So in your case, what are the metrics that you guys drive? Some of them may be obvious, but tell us how are these brands, when they implement Replika software, how are they measuring success?
Again, every brand is different, right? So, when we deal with companies like L'Oréal, they have big mandates for, what percentage of sales is going to be e-commerce by 2025. What, each brand and each region has different metrics that they need to follow. So understanding what they are, but for the most part, those are all numbers driven, and the devil's in the details. So it's, understanding what their plan is to get there. And that's where we came in, because I think they always had the idea that they could, use their influencers differently, or perhaps their in-store associates could, play a bigger role and help drive e-commerce without all the internal struggles. But for a company like L'Oréal, they also have salons and stylists around the world that are big fans of their brand already. So, how do you empower the people who already use your product with influence and extend their influence and allow them to help you make your goals? And that was, understanding that was really important, because we were able to speak to the different divisions in different companies and say, for the PPD division at L'Oréal, engaging your stylists and salons in a new way and giving them the potential to sell products that are not just sitting in the store shelf creating dust in their salon, but be able to proactively reach out to customers, when they're not in the store. And I will tell you that obviously we started well before, the pandemic, but there were those who didn't really quite understand it, because they always thought that brick and mortar was a no-brainer. 80% of my revenue is always going to come from brick and mortar, even though, internet sales were, a growing portion. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden people were like, oh my God, nothing's a given anymore. So we really have to prepare for the future. And that actually, helped us get our message across a little bit too.
So that was an accelerant for you guys.
For us, well, listen, and we all suffered tragic losses, myself included, but for the business, it definitely, enhanced our story and gave a little bit more credibility to those people who didn't really quite understand the full value prop.
Okay, so can you name any of the brands that you're working with right now in regions of the world, or no?
Sure.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Kareen?
Kareen.
Kareen?
We're working with the retailer Printemps in France. We're working with Dior in the US, with Kerastase, Redken in Europe. We're launching in Brazil next month. We're going to be launching with Shu Uemura at the end of this year in Japan, in Vietnam also, with all the brands of L'Oréal. We integrated
All the brands of L'Oréal.
Yes,
in
Vietnam, yes.
Wow.
We integrated in Egypt with Kerastase. Just trying to see the other
Sephora.
one. Sephora, yes.
Never heard of them. Never heard of them.
Actually, Sephora is a really interesting use case. So we met with the president of Germany when we were at La Maison des Startups. By the way, we're still there 2 years later. We've stayed with them. And he was trying to develop a new selling channel, retail, wholesale, and now just to sell through social selling. And we developed a white label app of our app called My Sephora Store, Whereas not only every beauty advisor in store can use the application, but it's more of a peer-to-peer. So if you go in Europe on the Sephora.de, you can download the app My Sephora Store, and anyone who's a fan of Sephora can become a seller for Sephora. And
So I can go and create my Sephora store.
If you're in Germany or Hungary.
Okay, okay. Now this is all gonna pervade the world at some point, correct? I mean, you're scaling it to the world of these brands. How are you managing to control all that chaos? You know, that's a lot, right?
That's what startup are, you know, we just handle it. We just juggle between project, contract, and, you know, those big groups, they don't move as fast as us. So we are able to, we're working on 20 different projects right now. And as a big retailers, we will announce probably at the end of the month. And we just juggling all these projects. That's what startups do. We can just really adapt. And
but I think there's a very dangerous part for entrepreneurs with juggling, and I'm just going to say it's called focus, right? We do have a lot of balls in the air and a lot of things going on, but it's very easy for an entrepreneur to be pulled in a different direction than what your core mission is. We know we're powering social selling programs. We know the features and benefits that we have in our platform and what our roadmap looks like. And yes, we do add other things to our roadmap as we go forward, but we rarely will take a new idea that comes from somebody else that takes us in a slightly different direction and prioritize that and forget about what our core mission is, because our core mission is what got us here. And so we need to keep building on the core as opposed to going in different directions and try to solve every problem for every brand. So while we do have a lot of things going on at once, and we do have these entrepreneur hours, which don't really allow for a lot of sleep, you still have to maintain your vision and understand what your client, the direction your clients are telling you, and stay the course. Because if an entrepreneur gets pulled out of their direction, it's very difficult to get pulled back in, when you're a young company.
So I imagine that social selling is going to be the norm, right? Can you imagine any companies that will not do social selling? Or tell us about how that all unfolds.
So social selling already exists. And again, under the heading of don't try to invent anything completely new, right? Facebook has checkout. Instagram has checkout. TikTok is working. All the next platform tomorrow that gets launched will try to find ways to monetize and ultimately drive traffic. What makes us different is that we drive the traffic back to the brand's ecosystem, right? So it's really good for brands to be involved with social media, engage influencers. We don't advocate against any of that. We think it's all amazing brand building stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're driving people back to your own ecosystem and building long-term relationships with the customers on your ecosystem, and the transactions are happening on your website, back to DataLucent, you know the customer, you have the customer data, you can give them more personalized attention, and you could develop the long-term relationship with the customer that creates long-term value. And that's the difference between social commerce that's happening on Instagram and everywhere else, and what we're empowering. And I think that's why the brands really appreciate, the value proposition we bring to them. So social
really
commerce is here to stay.
Yeah, you empowered the brands tremendously. And I'm a big champion of that, unequivocally. I love social media too, but I think that everything's been monopolized and centralized, and the world doesn't really operate that way in the future. We were talking about that previously. So what are the next steps? How does Replica maintain its great relevance and success?
You want to take it, Kareen?
So we continue to expand through several regions within those two groups. We are also working with other big groups. We'll be able to announce this in a couple of weeks.
Come on. Okay, all right. A couple of weeks.
Yes, and we improving functionality on our applications. Some other group we're talking to are actually from different vertical, like in electronic, in publishing, so different verticals. So we're just going out to from the beauty, from the luxury or the fashion industry, just to expand our network.
And Milton, I think it also comes down to, understanding who the other players are out there and what functions they may be offering that, kind of would work. So as you know, we recently connected with a very impressive company that offers live streaming, offers a really good video creation tool for creators. And we believe, after just a few meetings, that that's a really good relationship that we'd like to bring into our platform, the ability for the social sellers that brands invite to live stream, to have really good creative content tools that they can make content quickly, and then of course through our platform, distribute that out. So it's all about keeping your eyes and ears open, understanding how the market is moving, know what you can do on your own and what you need partners for, and then continue to innovate and move with the market.
One question I have about the sales associate, excuse me, because that role has evolved dramatically, right? It's become much more digital. I would even say more humanistic. So have you found that the associates have adapted and adopted your technology fairly easily? And does it require training? What does it require, in terms of getting them really focused and executing brilliantly?
So using the platform is very easy. So they get it usually right away. What's a little bit more difficult is and we do training this and we work with the brand, is training them the way they are trained to speak to the consumers when they're at the counter. For example, the way to speak to followers on Instagram, the way to create content on Instagram and tag this. So
Yes.
This takes a little bit more training from both us and from the brand. But we have some really successful story in the US with one of the luxury beauty company, and one of the top beauty advisors is creating great content on Instagram, tagging a product. She has a Replica microsite. She puts all the products she does makeup and tutorial with on Instagram. And just for her, it's literally like you would be standing in front of her in one of at the beauty counter, and she would explain you about the new product, which is really insightful when you cannot get to the store actually.
So to me, you're transforming that job that used to be kind of a boring sit around and wait for people to show up. Hey, marketing, why aren't you bringing more people to the store? Or, hey, I hope somebody shows up just by chance. That whole role, that job that people say will be eliminated, you have really reinvented and empowered these human beings. Am I exaggerating, or is that what's happening?
I don't. Go ahead.
I think they were, those, for example, in the case of beauty advisor, they were the original influencers. If you were going at the counter and just buying a eyeshadow, you would leave with the lipstick and the mascara and all these products because they inspired you to try it, to buy it. And just repositioning them wherever the customer is, whether it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, or where they are, and showing them what they would be showing at the counter, actually has empowered them to create content and be also those influencers and participate in the sale wherever. So it's actually been really good for them to transform the way they've been selling, really.
I think, Milton, just one more point on that. I think another important evolution for us at Replica was understanding that creating the tool is great, training people to use it is great, but we thought originally that we would create and then sell to a brand. And what we realized is we need to be partners with the brand, because we are, we get the field of vision from all of our brands. We see aggregated data, we see best practices. And so therefore, being a part of the program and helping to feed back best practices within their own, range and goals were incredibly valuable for our clients. So we don't just sell a software or solution. We're not selling any hardware. We're really partnering with our brands to create social selling programs, which are, generating nice percentages of revenue and growing.
Yeah, that's what's really fascinating to me, that a lot of tech companies don't realize that we're not selling tech. This is not like selling a stapler. This is a system, a process, and empowerment of human beings to be enhanced by that technology. I think you got that, and I think that is certainly part of your success.
Well,
So-
that just circles back to your original point, right? We're not tech people. I mean, I've built tech. I've been involved with computer. I was a computer science major before there was even PCs. Okay, but the bottom line is that we came to it from a perspective of the user and the client, not what great tech we could create in a back room somewhere and then throw it upon the industry. So I think that was a really important part for us as well, is just understanding the user, how it's going to be used, and then presenting the front end that it's easy and fun to use, the back end sophisticated, the front end is not.
Okay, one question for you that is more personal, because we're going to get into a Q&A session. You had long-standing careers. You might be Gen Xers and boomers, and I don't want to know which one you are. I know I'm a boomer, but I reinvented my career. And what I want to do is hopefully have you inspired. Give us a couple of words on how reinventing yourself in this digital age, because you did that wholeheartedly, completely, wholly. How did that, how does that feel? How do you do it? How can other people do it? Kareen, you go first.
For me, I think innovation has always been part of me, even in my career at Neiman Marcus and Bergdorf, because I was looking for new trends, for new ideas for the store. So it was always about innovation. And while it was more on the merchant side and the product side, it was always innovation. And when I got a little bit tired of doing the same things, I really got interested on more of the business side, how consumer were shopping. So innovation went from product to really consumer inspiration. That's when I started to be super interested. This was not the fashion director inspiring customers anymore, but it was everybody. Everybody had a following that was getting inspired, that you could inspire. So that switch kind of really came organically, really. And just, I didn't know it would be that difficult. Building a software. Maybe I was naive 5 years ago. I just saw, yes, well, it's a great idea. It's going to work. We're going to do it. And yes, and thank God, maybe I didn't know all that. But I think always learning and be passionate. I've always been passionate about the fashion and the luxury industry. So being passionate about the industry, protecting the industry was always, when we build a product, was always a key point for me. And often now I put myself in the shoes of our clients. What would they want from it? So it's always been about this industry and building something for them, and just the step becoming an entrepreneur, it's just been easy, and I love it, even though it's the most difficult things I have done to date.
Corey, thank you.
So for me, it was a little different. I think it all starts with understanding what's in your gut and what makes you passionate. I had a very good paying job. I was at a very high level at media companies. People that are still in the business that I was in have long since retired, belonged to 3 golf clubs and own large yachts. So maybe I didn't make the smartest decision because I don't have any of those things, but I do know what I'm passionate about. And so I fortunately had a runway. I had an opportunity to break off from the corporate life and the income and the lifestyle that it gave me, because I wanted to chase what I really, really liked. And that is creating something, being a part of, being a change agent. I like the little bit of organized chaos. I like controlling chaos a little bit, but you have to have that in your blood. So for me, it was, I did my corporate career, and it was time for me to try something that I can own, that I can make happen, and I can do it within the vision that, kind of felt comfortable with me. And so it's just, it's a matter of making the leap. And as Kareen mentioned, this is not an easy thing to do. As being an entrepreneur, I wasn't lying when I said that, the CEO makes all the big decisions and then cleans the bathroom after everybody leaves. We literally have done that for 3 or 4 years. You got to be ready for it.
Well, it's very inspirational. I'm going to hand it back. Thank you. This is a great way to end our formal session, and then hand it back to Katie, Catherine Sousa, to do the Q&A. Katie?
Great. Corey and Kareen, thank you very much. Wonderful insights. First question that we have is, are you using or planning to use augmented virtual reality on mobile devices?
The answer is we don't right now see the application. We do see AI being involved. I'll give you a simple example. A social seller sells a 12-ounce shampoo to a customer. The AI in our system will be able to detect that this has an average product life cycle of 3 weeks, and it will prompt the social seller to, come back within 2 weeks as an example and re-engage their consumer to see A, if they like the product, and B, if they want to reorder. But augmented reality, because we're not consumer facing, we don't really see a role for that right now in our business.
Great, thank you.
Katie,
So,
any more questions?
so next question is, what does the future look like for Replika Software? What do the next 2 years, the next 5 years, what ultimately would you like to see come for Replika Software?
You want that, Kareen?
Oh, you take it.
Okay. So, we're in an extreme execution phase right now. As Kareen mentioned, by the end of the year, we'll be in almost every continent. We have the good fortune of having more demand right now for our product. So the next 2 years for us is all about executing and innovating. The execution side is just getting more and more distribution, more and more social sellers, showing increasing use of the platform, and proving the thesis that social selling is the future of e-commerce. And then, of course, there's funding that goes along with that. There's, reporting to the board and everything else. So staying on the course, executing properly is really the phase we're at right now.
Thank you. Katie?
So the next question is specifically talking about the live stream that you spoke about earlier, Corey. How are you thinking about incorporating that into Replika? Can you share a little bit more about the company that you'd be working with and really what that might look like?
So without sharing the company itself, Kareen, why don't you take this one? This was actually one of your original ideas.
So right now in our platform, each social seller also has a microsite. So when the customers click on the link on the board of inspiration, they land directly on the brand's website, where the microsite of the social seller with their profile pictures, their boards they created, and a little bit about themselves is waiting. And in our vision is to give every social sellers the capabilities to do live stream directly from those microsites, inviting their followers, inviting their clients to come shop with them, discover product directly from their microsite on the brand's website. So instead of building it ourselves, we were introduced to a live stream company that we will integrate with and offer that capabilities to the brands that want to give that to their social sellers.
So how do you imagine that the day or the flow will be for a sales associate? What might that look like? I'm always trying to picture that. Okay, I'm a sales associate, I'm in the store. I can now use Replika to sell virtually. I can sell face-to-face. I can combine some of those. Now here comes live stream. What does that look like?
So live stream, you can invite, let's say, your network and say on Friday at 4 p.m. I will do a makeup tutorial on evening makeup, and invite your network, whether the customers, the people that follow you on Instagram or any social media, and then just do a live stream of 15, 20, 30 minutes on the makeup, the looks that you want to showcase. And then with the Replika link, you can tag those products. People can shop directly on the while it's going through the live stream, and then the social sellers, the sales associates, get directly compensation for it.
And just even if just to round out that question, even if it's not live, imagine the sales associate now in a largely empty store. The new fall collection comes in, and if it's sitting in the store, how are you going to tell people about it? What a great way to create through our tool hey guys, I'm sitting in the store, the fall collection is here. Oh my God, if you take this skirt and match it with this blazer and these shoes, isn't this a great look for Saturday night? You tag the items in the Replika platform, you post it out on your social media platforms. It also resides on your microsite. The brand itself can highlight these videos on their main website. And then all of a sudden you have an entire ecosystem of ways that people can discover these videos and ultimately be inspired and shop.
Fascinating, fascinating. So yeah, this is a tough question, but somebody asked it. So Chanel and other companies have always said that they could not replicate the store experience, So they were not going to sell online, except maybe for a few items. Do you think that these kinds of breakthroughs actually now give the impetus for all of these brands who rightfully so, because I don't critique, luxury has brands that have spanned hundreds of years. There's no other industry like it. It's a phenomenal industry and so careful and meticulous. So does this now empower between social selling on Replica and live stream? Does that now empower the brands that were hesitant to be more digital to now go forward full throttle?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, first of all, Dior is one of our clients, right? So, and Dior is very, very different from, let's say, Kerastase. So understanding each client is obviously very, very important. But for Dior, their program is very controlled, as you might expect in the luxury industry. They're not inviting just anybody to be a social seller for them. They're empowering their well-trained sales associates with another channel to reach out to consumers. And they're even giving them, in some cases, the messaging that goes along with certain products and so forth. So it's not about staying away from where the customers are going just because you want to protect your brand. It's actually the opposite of that. It's understanding where the customers are and then giving your sales associates or your network of sellers the proper tools to be able to safely, on brand messaging, go out and present the brand where the consumers are, because they're no longer sitting in the store. You don't have that luxury of sitting around and waiting for the world to change back to the way it used to be.
And
Well,
I think
it's interesting you say.
for
Go
those
ahead.
luxury brands about our platform is that the brand control everything. So they have visibility on everything that's being sent, everything that's being clicked, where they want to put some product or not. They can decide. So we really built, originally the platform was built with that uber luxury brands that just want to control the experience.
Yes, I do respect that. I do respect the meticulousness and the control that luxury brands want to have. At the same time, being able to empower people. It's a little bit of a paradox. I like to call it love with structure, right? Love with boundaries. And I think you guys seem to have timed that beautifully. Katie, I think there's another question.
Yes, last question is, how do you apply Replica to smaller brands? Obviously, you all are working with some very major players, but can you share a little bit about how you would apply it to smaller sized brands?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we never forget that we started with smaller brands and we still have several smaller brands that we work with. You don't have to be a big brand to understand that, the people who love your brand have followers, have friends that they could inspire to learn about your brand. So right now, again, we work with brands of all sizes. One of the things that is in our short-term roadmap is creating more of a self-serve model so that brands of any size will just be able to go to our website, download the necessary materials and code to put on their site and be able to just really get going. So that's kind of phase 3 for us is, expanding for an ease of client acquisition and just to be able to have a self-serve model to do it. But currently we work with brands of all sizes and we're happy to do that.
Wonderful. Katie, back to you. Thank you, by the way. You guys have been phenomenal and we're getting great feedback on your energy, which of course I never doubted, but all the insights, the energy, we just love you guys and we wish you nothing but the greatest success.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you all for joining us. I hope it was as great as promised, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.